The only thing more stubborn than a little girl's belief in birthdays is a father's stubbornness to fix what life quietly broke. On the morning of her 7th birthday, Zara asks, with the wide, exacting honesty of children, "Will mommy come to my party?" His heart freezes on the word he has carried like a stone for 3 years. He doesn't have a mother to bring. So he does the unthinkable, he hires someone to be a wife, a woman he doesn't love, a woman with a past, for one afternoon of pretend family. He thinks it's a harmless lie, a small theater for a girl's happiness. But that one lie will change the way his daughter sees love, change the way neighbors whisper, and change the man himself in ways he never expected. Stay until the end, because the pretend stitches something real, and the ending will make you feel, forgive, and believe again. Omar had always been good at numbers. At the bank, his name was associated with patience, precision, and a quiet kindness that customers loved. At home, his numbers were different: payments, deadlines, the exact measurements of dinner portions that made running a small household with a child feel possible. When Lena left 3 years ago, she took the small things, the laugh that used to fill the kitchen, the habit of leaving notes on the fridge. She didn't leave a reason that made sense. She left a void. Zara, with her crooked front teeth and unstoppable curiosity, continued to ask questions that had razor edges. Where is mommy? Is she mad at me? Did I do something? For a long time, Omar tried to answer with the truth, messy, incomplete, wrapped in the adult fear of destabilizing a child's world. But on her birthday, with cake and balloons and the little paper crown he'd managed to cut crookedly, the truth felt like an unkind knife. Zara had been dreaming of a mom party for weeks, copying moms she'd seen at school, the moms who baked, the moms who hugged extra hard during the present opening. On a rain-wet Thursday, Omar found an ad online: professional family actors for hire, celebrate without the fuss. He laughed, first, the kind of laugh that comes from a man who'd been pushed up against a wall by love and found a door. The price was more than he could comfortably spare, but comfort had been a stranger for years. The thought of Zara's face pushed him forward. When Maya walked into the cafe the contract required them to meet at, she had a presence that didn't demand attention but crafted it. Tall enough to make his daughter feel protected, but gentle in the way she tucked a loose curl behind her ear. She smelled faintly of turmeric and coffee, as if she carried the warmth of a home she had lost and rebuilt many times over. Her voice could be practiced, it could also be real. The agency described her as a family role actor, but when she smiled at Omar, there was something in her eyes, a flash of apology, a map of hard choices, that told him she had lost and rebuilt many times over. Her voice could be practiced, it could also be real. The agency described her as a family role actor, but when she smiled at Omar, there was something in her eyes, a flash of apology, a map of hard choices, that told him she had known loss, too. They negotiated like two pragmatic strangers agreeing on an odd job. The plan was simple: for 3 hours on Saturday, Maya would beat Lena. She would arrive with a gift, sing the wrong verse of Happy Birthday, on purpose to tease Zara, and leave by sunset with the drama of a soft-hearted actress. He handed her the photo of Lena he kept folded in the drawer, a photo where Lena and Zara were both laughing, hair caught in sunlight. Maya looked at the photo, and her face softened into a seriousness that made Omar feel, for the first time, like this wasn't a transaction. I won't lie to the girl more than she needs, she said. But I will be kind. The small living room burst to life on Saturday. Balloons bobbed like colorful thoughts, and Zara circled the cake like a tiny, happy planet. Friends from the nursery arrived, paper crowns askew, faces sticky with anticipation. Omar watched from the edge of the kitchen with an ache that felt ancient and urgent. He had rehearsed how to introduce Maya, how to keep the lie unsullied by panic. He had set his jaw and promised himself control. When the doorbell rang, Zara's body pointed like an arrow. She sprinted to the door with a speed that betrayed a lifetime of small hope. Maya stood framed in the doorway, carrying a bouquet that was almost too sweet, almost too perfect. Omar felt his pulse in his throat. He could have stepped forward, spoken the truth, told Zara that this was a special friend, that sometimes grown-ups borrow stories to make children happy. Instead, he watched as a child's face lit as if by a switch. "Happy birthday," Maya said, and in that instant the room inhaled. She folded into the play like a practiced dancer and a gentle stranger at once. She didn't speak as an actress, she spoke like a woman who had rehearsed kindness until it sounded like memory. She complimented Zara's crown, fumbled meaningfully with a small singing game, and pulled Zara into a hug that was firm and frank and perfectly plausible as a mother's. For 3 hours they had what Omar could not give alone, laughter threaded with easy chatter, someone to hold Zara while she unwrapped a gift, someone to cut the cake and blow out the candles with exaggerated sorrow and great affection. The neighbors congratulated Omar on his happy family, complimented his wife for bringing warmth to the party. A neighbor who had once been brusque even winked and asked Omar for the baker's number. And then, like any good play, the curtain needed to drop. Maya arranged a little scene. She would leave early to catch a supposed urgent call, promising to visit Zara on Sunday. She kissed Zara's forehead, whispered something about making your wishes come true, and left. For Omar, the house seemed to lose light with her exit. The hush felt heavier than the laughter had been. He thought the relief he would feel, for having protected his child from a sad truth, would be gratitude. Instead, it was guilt, hard and sharp as a winter wind. That night, Zara fell asleep with the card Maya had left tucked under her pillow. Omar sat at the kitchen table, the family photo spread open, fingers tracing Lena's face as if he could map back what was missing. He thought of Maya at the door, the warmth that had filled for 3 hours. He thought of the neighbor's eyes, of the subtle shift in how people now nodded at him, a social kindness that came with a price. He didn't see the first gentle outline of something new forming, he only saw the immediate consequence of his choice. He had lied, and lying felt like stepping out on thin ice. But as weeks passed, the small lie began to ripple. Maya kept her promise. She called on Sunday with a voice that mixed caution and tenderness. She arrived at Zara's school one afternoon to help with an art project, showing the little girl a way to fold paper cranes. Omar measured himself in how much he allowed this intruder into their space. He told himself it was temporary, that when Lena's image returned as an explanation, if Lena ever returned, they would end this carefully constructed play. But Zara started to imagine Maya as something bigger than an actor. She started to ask questions with an assumption Omar wasn't prepared to correct. "When will mommy come to my dance?" she asked. Omar felt the old panic return. Maya, for her part, did what she did best, she listened. She listened to Zara's small, sharp worries, the ones that smell of chalk and afternoon light, and she listened to Omar's bigger, muffled confessions. She didn't pry but she didn't retreat either. Slowly, she became a presence that filled spaces with help. A teacher's parent who could attend a recital, a fixer of a broken toy guitar, a woman who could fold laundry without clenching her jaw at the sight of a lone man doing the work of 2 parents. The household's rhythm changed to include her steps. Omar told himself he would control the narrative. He would not love. He would not fall into the trap of feeling safe. He had survived once by walking away, he would not risk the sharp edges of loving and losing again. But human hearts are not spreadsheets. The arithmetic of 0 and 1 and 0 does not account for the slow accrual of small kindnesses. Maya's presence was a ledger of small entries, helped with homework, brought soup on bad days, sat quietly during a thunderstorm. Each was a deposit in a bank Omar had thought closed. 3 months in, the neighborhood began to behave as if Maya had always been part of their picture. Children at Zara's school began to ask if Mommy Lena had helped with a class play. Omar found himself answering with dodges that frayed more and more each day. He wanted to be honest, but honesty felt like an act of cruelty to a child who had learned to hope from the small things adults did for her. The first real test came on a gray Tuesday when Lena, the real Lena, returned. Her appearance was not dramatic. She didn't stand at the door with a suitcase and an apology. Instead, she came as a thread pulling at a long-stitched seam, a message from a distant cousin on social media, a mutual friend's wedding photo where Lena smiled with another man, a photograph that made Omar's chest feel like a drum being beaten from the inside. The neighbor, in the cruelest kindness, asked about the wife he'd introduced. "Oh, I saw Lena at the market yesterday. She looked different." Omar felt the ground move. Lena's return was not a plan. It was rumor given weight. For a week Omar watched for her, half hoping, half dreading. When Lena finally came back through the same door she had left 3 years earlier, it was not for him. She walked into the living room where Zara had been drawing and froze as if the scene belonged to someone else. Time had a way of making people's faces both familiar and unreadable. Zara ran to her without the hesitation Omar had feared. Children have a quickness of forgiveness that can shame adults. Lena looked at her daughter and something old surged up in her, and then she looked at Omar with eyes that held both blame and apology and exhaustion. "I'm sorry," Lena said, the words falling like brittle leaves. "I didn't know how to come back." The truth burst open then, messy and necessary. Lena had been away because of new life, a new relationship, a chance at something she believed would finally keep her steady. She had tried to reconcile that with motherhood and failed. She had left without a clean goodbye because she couldn't carry both the shame of leaving and the face of the child she loved. Omar saw that Lena had not been cruel, she had been lost. And he felt again that odd mix of anger and compassion that makes endings complicated. For Zara, the reunion was small and big at once. She wanted to know if Lena would stay. She wanted to know if she could be allowed to call this woman mommy again. Lena promised things she had no right to promise, and Omar watched the fragile scaffolding of that promise with wary hope. The neighborhood talked. People renewed old judgments. Omar learned quickly that truths, even true ones, rarely settle everyone. Meanwhile, the secret of the hired wife became an open wound. A friend of a friend had noticed Maya at a festival and asked a pointed question. The rumor mill turned. When Lena met Maya, there was a tension that tasted of other people's consequences. Maya was not threatened. She had known from the moment she was hired that she could never fully belong. But she had also, in the quiet, come to care. It became painfully clear that the arrangement could no longer be sustained. Competing truths collided, Lena's hesitant return, Maya's growing place in Zara's day-to-day, and Omar's clumsy attempt to protect a child with a make-believe solution. The house became a place of conversations that had not happened before. Lena wanted to rebuild. Maya wanted to be honest about what she had become to them. Omar wanted to protect his child, but the methods he had chosen now felt immature against the real hurt present. The pivot point came one late evening when Zara woke up from a nightmare and crawled into Omar's bed, tears silent and heavy. He lifted her small body and held her until the shakiness passed. "Mommy," she whispered into his shirt. Omar felt his defenses crumble. He had been pretending to be a guardian of truth when the actual honesty needed was different. He needed to teach his child that adults can fail, that love can be messy, and that promises are sometimes a long road, not a one-time event. The next morning, with the kind of courage that emerges from sleepless tenderness, Omar called a meeting. He sat Lena and Maya at his kitchen table with Zara between them like the bright compass point of a map. There were no agents, no rehearsed lines, only the raw edges of 3 lives touching. Omar explained why he had done what he did. He apologized to Lena for having hidden the truth from Zara and to Maya for having used her as a temporary bomb. Maya, who had spent hours teaching Zara to fold cranes and to accept small defeats, did not ask to be the heroine. She asked only for clarity and for a place to breathe. What followed was not cinematic reconciliation, but ordinary human work. Lena confessed the things that made her run: fear, shame, choices that looked like escape. She wanted to be part of Zara's life again, but new trust would have to be earned. Maya offered to step back gracefully, she said she loved the little girl and would not stand in the way of a real mother-daughter relationship. She also said, with surprising firmness, that she wanted to remain part of their circle in a way that respected everyone's truth, as a friend, a teacher, a neighbor. Omar, who had spent so long calculating safety, learned then the currency that matters, honesty. They made a plan that looked clumsy and honest. Lena would attend therapy sessions with Omar, not because it was a magic fix but because it would help them navigate messy reconnections with professional guidance. Maya would visit sometimes, invited, and would teach Zara the paper crane method she had introduced. Omar promised to stop hiding truths. He promised to listen. The neighborhood needed time to catch up with them. People adjusted. Some friends drifted, others returned. Zara, with the elasticity of a child, adapted faster than any adult expected. She learned to call Lena mommy sometimes and Lena at other times, with the casual fluency of a language learner. She kept Maya's card under her pillow, but no longer with the same secretive reverence. It became a token of a woman who had been kind at a time of need. Months later, on a rainy afternoon, Lena stood at the kitchen sink drying a single plate while Zara scribbled at the table and Maya sat by the window folding paper cranes with measured, confident fingers. Omar watched them, a father, a partner in repair, a man who had tried a lie for love and paid for it in humility. He felt no triumphant finish, only the gentle lift of something like peace. The family they had formed was unorthodox, ragged in places, stitched in others, but it was theirs. There were still nights when Omar felt fear, the old, greedy fear of losing someone he had come to rely on. There were still days when Lena's past choices made him flinch. But they had begun to practice forgiveness in the small, practical ways that matter, showing up for a school play, fixing a leaky faucet together, sharing the bedtime stories. Maya sometimes came over simply to share a laugh, and when she did, Zara would jump into her lap like a girl who trusted love enough to test it. In time, the community stopped asking whose family they were and started asking whether their family was kind. The question became a kind of quiet blessing. People knew the truth now: the wife had once been hired, but what they had received in return was not an actress's performance but the patient work of people choosing one another. The lie had been a scar, the honesty that followed had been a healing. On Zara's next birthday, 3 years after the first one with the hired wife, they invited fewer people. Lena baked the cake, imperfect, slightly sunken in the middle, rich with the earnestness of a person learning to stay. Omar read a ridiculous poem he had written about the day Zara was born, speaking words that felt truer with every awkward line. Maya arrived late with a stack of paper cranes and a small, real smile. The room was full of small, uneven miracles. Zara, now 10 and brimming with the kind of quiet wisdom kids have when they've seen grown-ups be brave, looked at the 3 adults who had rearranged their lives around her. "I'm glad," she said simply. "I like our family." Omar felt his chest unclench. He thought of the beginning, of the desperate choice to hire a fake wife to spare a child pain, and realized that the most important part wasn't the lie itself. It was what came after, the willingness to face the consequences, to invite truth in, to do the messy work of rebuilding trust. He had wanted to protect Zara from sorrow. He had ended up teaching her a more durable lesson: love is not the absence of hurt, but the presence of repair. The story did not end with a neat bow. There were no miraculous conversions, no cinematic reconciliations where every character's past became instantly forgiven. There were, instead, dinners where Lena and Maya laughed together over Zara's clumsy school reports, evenings when Omar and Lena argued about money and then found their way back with a shared joke, and quiet mornings when Maya left a cup of coffee on the porch and a folded crane for Zara. In the end, what began as an act of theatrical kindness became a real education in human fallibility and resilience. Omar learned that lies, even small ones, create debts that must be paid with honesty. Lena learned that running away does not erase the responsibility of fatherhood and motherhood, and that return takes more than words. Maya, who had entered as a professional stranger, discovered that her real gift was not pretending but showing up. And Zara, who had the extraordinary capacity to forgive and imagine, grew up believing in a complicated, beautiful truth: families are not always built from pure beginnings, but they can be forged from the bravery of people who choose to stay. If there's a single thing to hold on to from their story, it's this: kindness can be a messy, imperfect tool. But when mixed with honesty and courage, it can mend what seemed irreparably broken.